One of the greatest rivers in the world, the Mississippi is America's river.
From the headwaters, which is Minnesota, all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, cuts across the whole country. We're real fortunate in Minnesota to host it in this state.
It flows through time, through memory, and through our imagination. Connecting us to nature, to history, to each other, and to the rest of the world. In this national park, the river is a ribbon of green in the midst of an urban landscape. It flows past and links together neighborhoods, pristine parks, historic landmarks, a waterborne highway, and spectacular scenery.
The Mississippi River means many things to many people. The Mississippi is a river full of life that we're part of. But it's also a river full of stories. And many of these stories start right here in this park.
This stretch of the Mississippi River was designated a national park in 1988.
We are in the only gorge on the entire length of the Mississippi River, below the only waterfall on the entire Mississippi River, one of the world's great rivers.
This portion of the upper river was deemed a national treasure because of its many historic sites and natural features. Gathering the water from the heart of North America, the Mississippi River begins in northern Minnesota. From here, it begins its journey south, more than 2,300 miles to the Gulf of Mexico. The national park encompasses a 72-mile stretch of the upper Mississippi, from its confluence with the Crow River in the north to south of Hastings, Minnesota. This is a different kind of national park, a constellation of natural places and urban spaces knit together by America's greatest river.
This is a partnership park, and it's a park composed of many local places, many local parks. Each of which has a significant story to tell. But in their composite, they tell a national story. And that's the beauty of this park.
Welcome to Bike with a Ranger. Today we're going to be exploring just some of the trails along our 72 miles of national park.
There's this vision that you have to go north to experience the outdoors and experience wildlife. People need to learn more about what's just outside their front door.
For millennia, water has shaped this place. 20,000 years ago, wind-swept glaciers covered the land. Then they began to melt. Where the floodwaters met, near present-day St. Paul, a thundering waterfall formed, dwarfing Niagara Falls. The waterfall churned away at the soft sandstone that lay beneath. As this waterfall eroded upstream, it carved the steep sides of the gorge.
For 12,000 years, St. Anthony Falls wore its way up from where St. Paul is now, all the way up the riverbed to this location in present-day Minneapolis.
The forces of ice, flooding, and erosion created three distinct river landscapes. At the park's northern end, the river flows through a comparatively flat landscape. South of the falls, it enters a steep walled gorge. And below the confluence with the Minnesota River, the Mississippi widens again. Here, the Mississippi often overtopped its banks, creating a broad floodplain with islands and multiple channels, home to an amazing diversity of life, and part of a crucial migration route. This stretch of the upper Mississippi has attracted people since the retreat of the last ice age. For thousands of years, the Mississippi River connected the ancient people of this area with major civilizations across North America. In St. Paul, ancient mounds still mark ceremonial burial sites. Standing atop the bluffs today, it's easy to see why this was high and sacred ground for these ancient people. For the Dakota, one of the most important sites in this national park is where the Minnesota meets the Mississippi. It is a place they call Bedote.
This particular Bedote is very significant to many of the Dakota people because they feel that this is the center of the universe here, the center of all things. They believe that this is the spot where the Creator made us.
By the early 1800s, newcomers would stake their own claims to the confluence of the Mississippi and Minnesota River. Historic Fort Snelling and nearby Sibley House call us back to a time when this place was at the very western edge of the new American nation.
There was never any real military action around Fort Snelling, but it became the center for American culture and power in this area. You also had the fur company immediately moving in. The confluence of the rivers had become a fairly major trading point.
For nearly 200 years, world travelers, artists, and entrepreneurs have traveled to this place. They first came by steamboat to Fort Snelling.
As steamboat transportation opened up on the river, you had this strange phenomenon of it being a place way out in the fabled North American wilderness that was relatively easy to reach for travelers.
Here, the past and present converge as modern-day visitors walk in the footsteps of explorers and adventurers.
For the mid-19th century, the falls, the gorge, that was all part of a magic landscape for them.
The scenery would become the subject of some of the most beautiful landscape painting of the mid-19th century, and still inspires artists today. Visiting the national park at St. Anthony Falls, one can still see the power of the Mississippi and how that power fueled the creation of today's landscape.
It's no surprise that cities grew up here, because this was a special landscape that offered many things to the folks that settled here.
For more than 100 years, this area was a bustling mill district. In the mid-19th century, lumber mills sawed millions of board feet from the forests of the north. By the beginning of the 20th century, farmers had spread across the prairies to the west. A flood of wheat poured into the milling district. New technology revolutionized flour milling.
They were now able at St. Anthony Falls to produce flour of the highest quality the world had ever seen in quantities the world had never seen. And this combination of quality and quantity meant that we industrialized the product of flour and exported it to an international market.
Brands like Betty Crocker, Gold Medal Flour, and Pillsbury became internationally known. No longer industrial, the historic mill district is now a thriving commercial and cultural center right at the heart of this national park.
The history at St. Anthony Falls that really changed the way the world ate. These are stories that connect to people's lives around the world, and they happened right here.
My name is Håkan Miller. I am a dispatcher for a harbor service in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Håkan Miller coordinates barge and towboat traffic in St. Paul's River Harbor.
I acquired my pilot's license the standard way by 720 12-hour days in the deck department of towboats and passenger vessels.
If there's a boat coming around the bend right here in front of us, I would have to know what side of the river I would want to be on, and who has the right of way, and who has to get out of the way.
There's no school where you can learn to be a riverboat pilot. The knowledge must be learned firsthand, passed from pilot to pilot, because the river is constantly changing. It runs high in the spring. And low in the summer. That natural process made shipping difficult and dangerous. To address the problem, the Army Corps of Engineers has dramatically altered the river.
Congress authorized a project that said we would have locks and dams from Minneapolis to St. Louis. And that creates a great chain or stairway of water so that we can float barges on it for transportation purposes.
The lock and dam system has created the river we see today. A river that flows year-round at a consistent depth through a straightened channel. The Mississippi River is now a waterborne highway made for barges. But these changes have altered the river's ecology. After construction of the locks and dams in the 1920s, the river became a series of stagnant pools.
It was just terrible here. There was just total, almost a biological desert here. There was no oxygen in the river and very few fish.
For nearly a century, the Twin Cities turned its back on the Mississippi River.
It was obvious that there was a huge problem with municipal waste and industrial waste being dumped directly into our rivers, and that's when the movement began to start to clean up the rivers nationwide.
Is that a giant rock?
Today, there is a new interest in preserving and restoring the park, its river, and the ribbon of green it flows through.
We're at Meeker Dam, which is along the Mississippi River in St. Paul. This is part of the Great River Greening Project. We're trying to restore a lot of native vegetation to this area so that migratory birds and insects can move along the Mississippi River.
Flowing through this national park, the Mississippi River is part of the longest flyway in the world.
Some of the species travel thousands of miles to South America, to their wintering grounds, and then come back here.
It's just very clear that that narrow band of green along the river is incredibly important.
Very shortly we'll have indigo bunnings in here, and they breed here. They're just a spectacular bird. Gotten much more common because of all the restoration of the prairie.
Some of the last remaining natural areas in the Twin Cities are found still along the Mississippi River valleys, where we still have some bluff prairies and rare plant species.
Perfect age. Yeah, well, 4 to 5 weeks old.
By the late 1960s, a once healthy population of bald eagles had been decimated by water and air pollution. These researchers take a blood sample from a baby eaglet, testing its exposure to toxic chemicals. Lately, the news has been better. Now many eagles nest in this national park.
The story of this river is ultimately a hopeful story. If you look at the big picture, you can see the river improving, and it's improving because of things that people have done. You need to experience the river, you need to explore the river and enjoy the river. Get out in canoes, hike along the river, and then I think it becomes part of you. You can begin to see the magic of it and why we should care for this river.
It is one of the most important rivers in the world, and incredible diversity of natural resources all in one area right through the Twin Cities, I think merits some level of protection. Having the National Park Service have a piece of that will really help protect that in the future, and I think that's really critically important.
Great rivers shape landscapes and natural environments, but they also shape people and national identity, and that's what the Mississippi River does. And in this park you can see it. Down here you can see evidence of the river's glacial origins. You can see the river's value to wildlife and birds. You can see great cities that grew up because of the river, and you can find places that influence national history. So here's where the Mississippi, I think, begins to show the meaning of its name, which is Great River.
The Face of the River, in time, became a wonderful book, which told its mind to me without reserve, delivering its most cherished secrets as if it had uttered them with a voice. And it was not a book to be read once and thrown aside, for it had a new story to tell every day. Mark Twain, Life on the Mississippi.